dance friends, and welcome to the Dance Edit podcast. I'm Margaret Fuhrer.
I'm Courtney Escoyne.
And I'm Lydia Murray.
We are editors at Dance Media, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about a new study that shows how COVID-19 has changed performing arts audiences in ways both disheartening and also encouraging, recapping the standout dance moments of MTV's strange but fascinating pandemic-era VMAs, highlighting Hayden Moon, a transgender Irish dancer who's working to make Irish dance more inclusive, and hearing from Amanda Morgan, a Pacific Northwest Ballet corps member who's become a real leader in the fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion in ballet. But before we get into all of that, do you think it's fair, Courtney and Lydia, to say that this recording session has become like a weekly form of therapy for us?
Oh, yes.
Basically, yes.
It's nice to take the screaming inside my heart and, well, not scream about it on the podcast, because that would be bad audio, but...
Yeah, I think having a chance to hash out complicated news stories together, and oh, wow, the news is just unrelentingly complicated these days. Or even just as Courtney was saying, being able to scream collectively, metaphorically speaking, into the void about everything instead of screaming into it alone, we find that comforting. So if you'd like to scream into the void with us, or have a more civilized discussion, please give us a follow on Instagram at the.dance.edit and Twitter at dance_edit, because we do want to hear your thoughts. We want you to get in on this therapeutic conversation too. So now, as usual, it is time for our dance headline rundown, which is just a brief look at some of the week's noteworthy news stories. Lydia, do you want to start us off?
The full cast of this season of Dancing with the Stars has been announced, and it is intense. Backstreet Boys' AJ McLean, Tiger King's Carol Baskin, actress and author Sky Jackson are some of the celebrities involved, along with Nelly, the rapper, of course, and Olympic figure skater Johnny Weir. So we're certainly in for an interesting season.
Hashtag 2020.
Can it get more bonkers? The American Guild of Musical Artists and the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society jointly released a playbook for safe return to work that explicitly addressed the particular needs of dancers and choreographers. It was developed in consultation with medical experts and will continue to be refined as more information and data becomes available. A good first step towards getting back to work.
Yes. Blackpool Dance Festival, which is one of the most prestigious competitions in ballroom dance, will be held online this year due to COVID-19 safety restrictions.
That is such a big deal.
It is. It began in 1920. It's kind of like arguably the Olympics of ballroom dance, and now it's moving online. So this is definitely unprecedented, and it'll be really interesting to see how this goes.
For sure. Hungarian ballet dancer Istvan Rabowski passed away at age 90. He and his first wife, Nora Kovac, became the first highly publicized dance defectors from the Soviet bloc when they fled from East to West Berlin in 1953, and were responsible for introducing ballet audiences in the West to the Soviets' athletic style well before Rudolf Nureyev made his famous leap.
An I-Align dance company in Greensboro, North Carolina is gathering, refurbishing, and distributing laptops to local schools in need. The Guilford County School District has ordered over 79,000 laptops, but due to production and shipping delays resulting from COVID-19, schools won't be able to receive the devices for several weeks, so I-Align is stepping up to help fill that gap.
In more television news, producers of Strictly Come Dancing, which is British Dancing with the Stars for our non-Anglophiles, are at work on a new dance show for the BBC with the working title Dance Crush. It'll pair professional dancers with novices to learn routines, and this is where stuff gets wild. They're going to see if their chemistry on the dance floor can spark a romantic relationship, or at least be enough to land them a date. I have so many questions.
Yeah, I have
Just
questions
so many.
too. And Facebook's AI team has developed a new system that creates original choreography for any song that a user feeds into it. So the dance routines are designed to be synchronized and surprising, which, according to Facebook, are the two main criteria of a creative dance.
Equal parts interesting and terrifying.
And Kyle Abraham penned an essay for USA Today talking about the ways his choreography speaks to the issues faced by his communities as a Black gay man. He wrote about how he has created dances that translate those experiences into universally relatable themes, and in so doing, engender empathy in the audience. I'd like to encourage everyone to give it a read. It's as approachable and thought-provoking as any of his choreography.
Yeah, we will link to that in the episode description. I feel like we've said it before. We'll just keep saying it forever. Representation matters.
And also, we love you, Kyle.
And we love Kyle forever, too. So in our next segment, we want to talk about a new study released this week that looks at how performing arts audiences have changed since the pandemic began. So the consulting firm TRG Arts analyzed data from 260 performing arts organizations in the US and also in the UK and Canada. Some of what they found was not great, like the fact that, unsurprisingly, ticket sales have fallen 90% overall in recent months. But the study also revealed an interesting shift in the demographic makeup of arts audiences. They appear to be getting both younger and more diverse.
So older audiences saw the greatest decline in ticket sales. The proportion of subscribers who were part of the silent generation decreased from 29% before COVID to 17%. Millennial audiences doubled their proportional purchase, 4% to 9%. There's also been a reduction in the average age of bookers. Single ticket buyers for the 2020-2021 season were more ethnically diverse, and there was a 2.9% decrease in white bookers compared to the previous year.
So I had a couple of thoughts about this. One, if you're feeling surprised at the news that millennials have been significantly increasing their donations, here is a gentle reminder that despite that generation's consistent infantilization in the popular imagination, I am 26 years old. I represent the youngest edge of that group, and we're adults, even if we have less generational wealth. And despite that, I've been watching my peers make deliberate choices about supporting the work that they want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm. I have sort of points on opposite sides of this to make. The first one is that we have to take this with a grain of salt, because what's really driving most of this change is older white patrons disengaging. That's the vast majority of the shift. And it's a delicate situation because, TRG actually gave an example of the risk involved in not continuing to woo older patrons. For one of their clients, I think they said for every 1% loss in audience from the boomers and the silent generation members, the organization lost $33,000 in annual revenue. For every 1% gain in participation from millennials and Gen Xers, they only realized a $7,000 gain. So it's a little bit scary. That said, this is one of those moments where it feels like stripping things down to the studs in terms of programming suddenly feels more realistic, because all accepted wisdom about what sells and to who is kind of out the window. So it does seem like a moment to start thinking about programming that's more inclusive, to give the younger audiences that are currently more engaged art that reflects them and their stories, programming to the audience that you want rather than the audience you think you have.
Well, and I think it's also worth keeping in mind that I think we're only just getting past the just getting through it phase. And just beginning to get into the intentionally planning ticketed digital seasons and events phase. So I'm thinking of Ballet X, Whim, Pacific Northwest Ballet, organizations that had plans for, live stage performances in the next year and have completely pivoted that so that it's designed for digital consumption and done in what seems, at least at the outset where we're standing right now, to be a really smart way. So I suspect after this fall season, we're going to have some data that is much more indicative and very interesting. The dance world's been talking about figuring out ways to how do we maintain older donors and not alienate them while also courting younger audiences. And this has been a discussion point for years and years and years. And now we are facing the biggest possible test case that'll have huge implications for what the landscape looks like once we can safely gather again.
Yep. Retweet. So shifting in our next segment over to the commercial dance world, MTV hosted its annual Video Music Awards on Sunday night, and this year we got the pandemic edition of the show, which was not broadcast live from the Barclays Center, as was announced back in June, but instead mostly taped at a bunch of different outdoor locations across New York City, and I have it New York City in quotation marks in my notes here because apparently some artists didn't fly into New York, but instead used faux NYC backdrops, and you know what? I respect that. Everybody stay safe, do what you feel comfortable with. But the unusual format actually seemed to inject some new energy into an event that, frankly, in recent years has felt less and less relevant. It allowed for better overall production values and also for some really great dancing.
Yes. This year's VMAs were supposed to be live, but most of the red carpet interviews, performances, award presentations were filmed days in advance, and there were strict social distancing protocols in place. Some of the danciest performances included Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande, Doja Cat, who performed Say So, replete with TikTok choreography, Chloe and Halle, and last but not least, BTS, who took home the award for Best Choreography for their single On, which debuted in February, which feels like a complete lifetime ago in the before times. For choreography, the lab, including Sienna Lalau and BTS's choreographer Son Sung-duk, took home that award. The group performed Dynamite, which recently shot to the top of the Billboard Hot 100, making them the first all-South Korean act to achieve that. One thing that I want to point out about the performance that I really loved was that often in U.S. award show performances, BTS hasn't really gotten the best camera work, in my opinion, at least compared to what they typically receive in Korean award shows. On Western award shows, there's a lot of panning back to the audience and showing the reactions, which can kind of feel like some sort of attempt to justify BTS's presence on the show. Like, hey, look at all these people who think these guys are cool, when they can really fully stand on their own as artists, and then some.
I did message Lydia just being like, oh my gosh, they're wearing these beautifully fit suits and they're dancing this well, and oh no, am I about to become a K-pop stan? What's happening to me? They have set the new aesthetic and performance, particularly in terms of dance. They have set the new standard. If you cannot meet this aesthetic and dance this well, then I don't want to hear about it.
Do we want to talk about Lady Gaga too? Because that was such an epic performance.
Here's the thing about Lady Gaga, and I feel like I've been saying this since I was in middle school, watching her early days and rise. She is a performing artist at heart, and that has always been true of her, and she's always come to life in such a spectacular way in these live award shows, and I loved watching the way she took advantage of this, yes, we can pre-film this format, but still giving that just 100% no holds barred, nothing's too weird, nothing's too out there performance. It was electrifying.
Yeah, 9 full minutes of Gaga with a little bit of Ariana Grande on the side. I just love her complete commitment to every aspect of the performance, from the choreography by Richie Jackson, which was kind of fantastic, to the costuming, different masks for each outfit. Thank you for making masks a part of your fashion in a way that made sense.
Yes.
Yeah, I just feel like at an award ceremony where some people almost literally phoned it in, cough Taylor Swift, that's the fact that she showed up so completely. She won the whole night for me.
I also just think, looking at the VMAs, it's look, if any award show is going to understand how to put on a damn good show within the confines of the digital sphere, you'd have to assume the one celebrating excellence in music videos would be it, right?
Yeah, but it was interesting to watch the creative teams behind all of these performances navigate the challenge of putting together something that A, felt true to the spirit of the original music video or videos, B, had the same buzzy energy as a regular live award show event, even though it wasn't done live in a theater. Basically make a new music video that nods to the first one but reads at least a little as a live performance. What even is 2020? They were taking some cues, I think, from the successful remote BET Awards, in that they were able to make this large digital collage feel cohesive and communal in the way that regular award ceremonies, for all of their flaws, do. And I think that sense of communal celebration is actually what's missing from a lot of the dance happening online right now, which almost always feels like it's occurring in a bit of a vacuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
So I guess when it comes to pandemic performance, we still have a lot to figure out, but maybe we've gotten a handle on the pandemic awards show? Maybe? Almost?
Someone page the Academy Awards, make sure they're taking notes.
So in our next segment, we'd like to talk about a trans activist who's fighting for change in a part of the dance world that has historically been governed by very restrictive gender binaries. Hayden Moon is a competitive Irish dancer from Australia who came out as transgender in 2017. And in his efforts to compete in Irish dance as a man, he came up against many obstacles. And a profile in Dance Magazine this week describes his continued efforts to make the world of Irish dance more inclusive.
So I do feel like we should give a disclaimer at the start of this. None of us are experts in Irish competitive dance.
Yes.
It's not our area, but Hayden is absolutely incredible. He came out as trans at the age of 23. His teacher at the time told him, no, you still have to compete in the women's section and you have to go by your dead name, which is just messed up on so many levels. And if I start ranting about this, I'm not going to stop. So I will move on. He switched schools, found a more competitive teacher, and that school helped him get a pro bono lawyer in order to get rules changed at the competition so that he could compete as a man. And doing so, isn't just allowing him to be who he really is and do the thing that he loves, but it's also going to make a huge difference for transgender dancers who want to compete in this very specific and ruled by the gender binary art form.
Yeah, again, caveat, I am far from an Irish dance expert, as Courtney established. But because the form is so gendered, performing as a man meant relearning for him a lot of the technique. I mean, he talks about dancing in heeled shoes rather than soft shoes, all of a sudden being asked to make noise and get down into those heels instead of staying up on his toes and trying to keep quiet. You really have to relearn so much of the form.
To make an analogy to an area of dance that I think all three of us are more familiar with. It's very in ballet, you're taught very much as a woman that everything is very lightweight. You're never heard. Everything's very delicate. Whereas the rhythm of what you do in the male steps is very different. And so I imagine like that mental shift and that physical shift is probably quite similar in terms of you have all of this knowledge that lives in your body that you're then tweaking just enough that it's gonna kind of mess with you a bit. So all that being said, as mentioned, this is an art form that has traditionally been very concerned with the gender binary, and this is progress and the beginning of progress. I cannot help but wonder, what about gender nonconforming artists who don't fit neatly into that binary? How can there be a place for them within this art form as well?
Small steps. Still more progress to be made. So Hayden is now offering support for people going through similar experiences. He co-runs the fantastic Intersectional Irish Dancers Instagram page, which is at Intersectional Irish Dancers. We'll link to that in the episode description, pushing for further change and inclusion in the Irish dance world.
Hayden, thank you for being you and being out and being proud and pushing for change in this art form that we all love so much. And here's to continuing to push for intersectionality in our entire field.
Hear, hear.
Yes.
So now we have the next installment in our voice memo series. And this week our message is from Amanda Morgan, who's a dancer with Pacific Northwest Ballet. Morgan first joined P&B as an apprentice in 2016 and entered the corps the following year. She is currently the only Black ballerina in the company. And she's become an important voice in the dance world's ongoing reckoning with systemic racism. She's been active in protests both online and in Seattle. And she's also busy now preparing for P&B's upcoming all-digital season. You'll hear more about all of that in her memo. So here she is.
Hey there, Dance Edit listeners. My name is Amanda Morgan, and I'm a Corps de Ballet member at the Pacific Northwest Ballet. 3 weeks ago, I came back to P&B, and we slowly started bringing some dancers back, and I was one of those dancers. Honestly, if you want to know the whole spiel, coming back, I have to, walk to work, so I walk 45 minutes in the morning to the studio. We have to have a yoga mat and our mask, obviously. We fill out a questionnaire every single time before we go in the building. I have a pod of 3 other dancers with me, which actually is really fun, but it is sad because you don't get to see all of your friends in the company. But I guess I'm just very happy to be dancing right now and, moving again, actually being able to move in a big space. That has been really, really fun. Now we're getting ready for our digital season, all digital season. So I'm obviously very excited about that. I think I've always wanted some way for people to just be able to buy a ticket no matter where they are in the world and just be able to see dance. And so I think it's really great that we're doing this, and I think it's going to change the dance world a lot. I'm personally getting ready to do Red Angels, like just a solo from it, which I haven't done since I was like 21. It was my first principal role in the company. So it's going to be really fun to revisit that. And I'm actually preparing to choreograph my first piece ever on the company for an additional digital work that will happen in our Rep 2 series. So that's really what I've been up to. It was kind of a blessing in disguise for the pandemic to happen to me because it really helped me realize my own power and my own gifts and talents. I'd been choreographing a lot. I choreographed for Seattle Dance Collective and did a couple little small projects on the side in addition to that. And I think that really helped me to get through this time, and just connecting with people during this time has been really great too. Me and another dancer in the company, Cecilia Iliasu, started a mentorship program for the students in the school at PMB, and I think that was probably one of the best things to come out of the pandemic, because I'd been wanting to do that forever, growing up in the school at PMB myself. So to be able to talk with all the students and hear their opinions and their voices, and they're all such intelligent and inspiring kids. So yeah, that's kind of what the pandemic has done in a positive way for me. Looking at systemic racism and I mean just how that affects the dance world, I think I've always had to be like that. I've always been like that. I think, I'm so happy that so many other dancers are talking about it more so now. I think it's something that needs to continuously be talked about. We need to continuously hold people accountable, even though it brings up some tender spots for people and, brings some stuff out of the woodwork. I think I've been wanting this to happen forever, and so I'm just so happy that it's happening now, because I'm hoping that the generations after me of dancers of color, will have it a little bit easier than what I did, or, what so many people who paved the way for me before I even started dancing. Now, with dismantling white supremacy, it's not enough to just post Black Lives Matter or even post a statement. Like, that's great. That's a starting point. But now you need to continuously talk about it. You need to, hire a consultant or hire a racial equity supervisor and actually have someone there that can look over these choices that you're making, what you're choosing to, bring into your company, what you're choosing to represent your company as, who are you hiring in all levels of your organization. And, with that racial equity work, I think that all of these things that we're talking about is ultimately going to change how we go about making decisions in the dance industry. Hopefully, hopefully we're going to see more choreographers of color and more diversity when it comes to the LGBTQ community, having, indigenous people as well in these, high up roles in arts organizations. I think it can only get better, in my opinion. And hopefully we won't see so much cultural appropriation or, racist ballets. I'm hoping for that. I think that we're really going to need to adapt if, we want to keep ballet alive. The one thing I can say about, what dancers should do right now and how to support each other is to just check on each other, make sure people are doing all right. I had a great conversation with one dancer that was also coming back around the same time in a different company, and just hearing little things like that, knowing that someone's going through the same struggle, I think it makes you feel like you're not alone. And I think that's what's really important. We need to make sure to feel like we're not alone. We're in this all together, and we are very much a community.
Amanda, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Please, everyone, make sure that you keep up with all of Amanda's dance projects and her advocacy work by following her on Instagram at Bailarina. That's at BAILA_RINA. And also be sure to visit pmb.org to find out more about the company's digital season. You do not want to miss her in Red Angels, for sure.
I'm so excited to see what she does with that site-specific work she's working on.
So am I.
Yeah. Subscribe and get into that. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We will be back next week for more discussion of the news that's moving the dance world. And in the meantime, keep learning, keep advocating, and keep dancing.
Mind how you go, friends.
Bye, everyone.
The The Dance Edit podcast is a product of Dance Media, publisher of Dance Magazine, Dance Spirit, Point, Dance Teacher, Dance Business Weekly, and the Dance Edit newsletter. Our hosts are Courtney Escoyne, Margaret Fuhrer, Lydia Murray, and Cadence Neenan. Our music is by Celestine, with special thanks to Broadway Dance Center for helping us record those football sounds. Find out more about the Dance Edit and subscribe to our daily newsletter at thedanceedit.com.